Welcome to Oklahoma Gardening. Today I'll begin by adding something new to our summer garden with some unique beans. We start the process of renovating a garden. I'll share with you the results of a potting soil demonstration we've been working on for the past couple of summers. And finally, Jessica Riggin is back with a recipe for your asparagus. Underwriting assistance for our program is provided by the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping to keep Oklahoma green and growing.
So if you're looking for an easy, low-maintenance perennial, have two different types of flowers on one plant. Capsaicinoids that gives the pepper its heat. It's April 15th, which means it's time to get out and start planting our warm season crops in our garden here in Oklahoma. And that includes our tomatoes and our peppers. However, today we're planting something a little bit more unique. So we're planting some beans that come from all over the world. A lot of cultures rely on beans for their nutritional value, and so we thought it would be fun to grow something a little bit unique in our garden this year. We've got 4 different seeds that we are planting, and of course you can see our trellis system that we have here. So we've got it growing, our trellis starts in our bed here, and then it kind of arches over the walkway behind us here, because these are not only edible, but they're also very ornamental, and they provide some really unique pods on them. So the first one we're starting here with is the Japanese winged bean. And so really they're a smaller bean. In fact, we have some here in a cup of water. I'm just going to drain off that water, and you can see those beans down in there. They're pretty small, so we're actually only going to plant them about a ½ inch to an inch in depth, and we're going to plant them 6 inches apart. Now, the reason why we had them soaking in water is because it's really best to soak them just for a couple hours on the winged beans before you actually plant them, and that will help promote this germination. So we'll have germination in about a week to 2 weeks, and again, we're going to plant these just about a ½ inch. And we're going to do it every 6 inches. So I'm going to plant a couple on this side and then probably a couple on the other side as well, just so that we've got some to trellis up over this arch here. Now, the unique thing about the winged bean is the fact that it gets its name winged bean because it creates this like star-shaped fruit. Now, this is a day neutral plant, so as long as the temperatures are above 70 degrees, it's going to start flowering, which is quite ornamental. It actually kind of produces these lavender leguminous flowers that sort of have that like sweet pea or almost like a wisteria, a small wisteria sort of flower to it. So you're going to see those prior to the pods being produced, and once you start seeing those pods being produced, they're going to actually continue on throughout the season, so you'll get a bountiful harvest until frost. Now, the next one we have that I want to talk to you about is called the Chinese red long bean, and this looks like a traditional kind of red bean that you would eat. Again, it's best to soak this for at least 24 hours. And again, these are a little bit bigger, so we're going to plant them a little bit deeper, probably about 1 inch deep, and again, about 6 inches apart. So I'm going to just sort of go down 6 inches from my last bean and place that in the ground. We're putting it right next to the trellis so that it will start to kind of climb up that metal trellis that we have here. And again, I'll put some on the back side. Now, the neat thing about this long bean is that it creates about 1 foot to 18 inches red long pod that you're going to see. So just imagine as this arches over, you're going to start to see those pods really hang down. And when you cook these up, it actually retains some of that red color as well. So a nice addition to your dishes. Now the next one we have here is the Thai soldier long bean. So it's actually the same genus species as the Chinese red bean. However, it's got a little bit of a different look on the actual long bean that it produces, because it's actually a mottled kind of green and red look to it. The other big difference is if you don't have anything to trellis onto, this is a bush type long bean. So we're still going to get those long beans that you're going to want to harvest when they get to be about 1 foot to 18 inches long. But we're going to plant these here in between where we don't have any trellis, because they don't vine. So we don't need it to actually grow on anything. Now again, we've got the beans here that we've been soaking a little bit. So I'm just going to pour that water off. You can see those beans are actually different than the red long beans. Because the red long beans are actually red, whereas these are kind of like black-eyed peas almost, where they have black and white to them. So we're going to plant a few right here. Again, just kind of do them about 1 inch down and about 6 inches apart. So we're just going to plant a couple here along the edges between our trellis. Now the last one we have here to plant is not actually a bean at all, even though it's named the Indian giant snake bean. It does kind of create this long, almost like a pod, but it's not a pod, it's actually a relative of a gourd. So if you cut it open, you can see it's sort of fleshy inside with some seeds in it. Now what we've got here, again, you want to soak your seeds overnight, the night before, and so we've got those, and you can see the seeds look very different than the bean seeds that we're seeing on the other ones. So they've kind of darkened up, and what this soaking does is actually allows that seed to imbibe the water, and it really just helps promote that germination process. Now these will trellis, so it's almost like a cucumber that you've got to trellis it over. And the big difference though is we're going to definitely space these further apart. So we're going to space them about 2 feet apart. So I've left this whole trellis just for this giant snake bean. However, it is a gourd. So what's going to be neat is we're going to have these crazy gourds growing, hanging down from these trellis. It's really a lime colored gourd. So basically you can see that I've direct sowed all of these in full sun. They need about 12 hours of full sun. So they're going to get plenty of sun, as this is south facing. And we're looking forward to how they grow and really showcase those ornamental fruits hanging down over the walkway. One thing that's kind of unique about this is the fact that they are kind of international fruits that you don't find in a lot of vegetable gardens. And that's something that I would encourage you to do and try this season. Of course, we're going to grow tomatoes and peppers, but try to find something new to add to your vegetable garden. If you've ever visited us here at the Botanic Garden at Oklahoma State University, you probably have seen our rock garden. Well, it's been here for several years, and it's come to a point where we want to sort of give it a new life again. So joining me is Professor Cheryl Mihalko, who is one of our landscape architecture professors. Professor Mihalko, so you're going to help us with this project. So tell us a little bit about where do we go? Because I think a lot of homeowners probably have a similar situation.
Yeah, it's always great to think about a new garden, to plan a new garden. It's really exciting. But before we do that, the site of the existing garden can really tell us a lot about how that garden did and potentially how our new garden will do. So I think really looking at the site, we can really see the bones, and maybe it'll help us make decisions for the new garden.
So when you talk about the bones of a garden, are we talking about the hardscape, the soil, and hardscape being any structures, rocks, stuff like that?
Right. Those things that usually are hardscape. Sometimes we talk about the bones of the garden in terms of permanent planting.
Okay.
So when we look at this garden, it's not just the actual site where the rock garden was existing. It really is important to take a look at what's surrounding the site and what affects the site. And so we have some really interesting features to consider about how we then bring into the new garden. So the black walnut that covers this garden doesn't interfere with any of the light because we have this beautiful south exposure. That's why the rock garden did so well. But when we look at it, it's, of course, any shade in Oklahoma is always appreciated. But it's time that it just needs a little work too. So we are bringing in an arborist to take a look at just limbing it up a little, maybe bringing it up so that when you look at the new garden, the leaves aren't in your sight line.
Right.
And then also over time, there's been some, of course, ice storms that have broken some limbs. So we're going to get all that cleaned up.
Okay, so it probably just needs a little bit of maintenance
Just
on
a
it
little work
anyway.
on that.
Yeah. So what's kind of the first step? I mean, it can be intimidating, especially for somebody who is not a professional architect.
Right.
Like, how do I approach this? Do I just start digging and pulling plants or what?
I think it's important to know where you're going. You know, you have to have some idea about it. That'll really help out. So in this case, what we're going to try to do in this garden is going to be to introduce some new cactus and succulent, really cold hardy ones. And this is the perfect site because it's already been a garden that is on a slope, that has not been supplementally watered. So we're looking carefully in this garden to see what we can reuse in terms of plant material.
Okay.
And there are some things.
So your design theme of a hardy succulent garden sort of was inspired by the fact that it was previously a rock garden, right?
Exactly.
So it's not like you're going to change this all of a sudden to an azalea garden that needs a really high or low pH or anything like that. You're keeping the intention a little bit similar.
Exactly. We're really just tweaking it.
Okay.
There's been a lot of interest in cold hardy cactus and succulent. I know the ambassadors here have been very interested in it. Of course, our cold winters, and just the variety. So we're going to, we are collecting plants now. We're looking at plants as far away as Taos, New Mexico, trying to find native cactus. So we're getting all those ready. But as we look at this garden, some of the things that we can include are the yuccas that are existing. And even in this case, where the yuccas are planted, we're going to go ahead and just leave them there and design around them. There's some other small plant material, like some of the euphorbias. I think we're probably going to dig those up and pot them up until we plant, but everything else will come out. And when we do that, we will probably any stone that's football size or a little bit bigger, we'll go ahead and pick those up and put them off to the side, stockpile them, and then really see what we have under there.
Okay.
When this garden was built, because it was intended as that rock garden, we know we have really good drainage, but we really don't know what's all the way under there. Was there some fabric or some plastic? Is there something that we need to replace?
So this is your opportunity to really dig in, no pun intended, and actually invest or enhance that soil if need be.
Right. And the idea behind a succulent garden, one of the things we know we can do to really help improve its viability is that we'll actually build up. So we do want to dig down, clean it out, see what's there, set those stones aside, and then when we put the plant material back in, we'll be specifically sculpting it in a way that the stones will help support the plant.
Okay. Cheryl, I always kind of think of it as like somebody redoing their living room, right? You're probably not going to go and get a new couch, but you might go get new throw pillows, change the color of the paint, some of that stuff. And so that's sort of like what we're doing here. We're deciding what we're going to keep, and then what we need to change, and then go forward with our plan. Well, Cheryl, I know y'all have a lot of work ahead of you, and we look forward to actually following this through the season. So we'll check back with you soon.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
It's gardening season, and it's that time we're all visiting our garden centers to purchase potting soils to fill our containers for this season. Now, when you go to look at the options, it seems like every year there are more and more options and decisions to make on which potting soil to get. In fact, it can be downright dizzying to decide. You've got ones that say they will feed for 3 months, some that say they feed for 9 months, some with pictures of flowers, others with pictures of vegetables, some say containers, some say raised beds. As a horticulturist, it can be confusing also for me as a consumer. So this is why we took it upon ourselves here at Oklahoma Gardening. 2 years ago, we visited 2 box stores and purchased every single container potting soil that they had, as well as raised bed mix that they had. In total, we came out with 16 different potting medias to try and experiment with. And what we did was we took some 2-gallon containers, and for every potting soil, we filled up 5 containers. Now I know these look like different containers than maybe what you use, but this is what we trialed here at the gardens. So for each of those, we used 5 containers. So in all, we had 80 pots. And in those pots, we planted a single 4-inch petunia. They all had the same type of petunia planted in them. And over the summer, for the next 3 months in 2021, we had our REU interns actually measure the growth, the length, the width, the height, and also the number of flowers that were produced on all 16 of those potting soils. And today I'm here to report kind of our findings from this little demonstration. And our top performers were the Fox Farm Ocean Forest potting soil, the Stay Green Moisture Max potting mix plus fertilizer, the Stay Green potting mix plus fertilizer, and the Miracle-Gro Performance Organics all-purpose container mix. Now, of course, there were a few that were a little underwhelming, and those included the Expert Gardener potting mix, the Miracle-Gro potting mix, and the Miracle-Gro Moisture Control potting mix. Now, it's important to let you guys know that we had all 80 pots hooked up to the same irrigation, and that was a drip system. So we watered them when we saw that the majority of them were needing moisture or needing irrigation. And so some of them perhaps got a little bit overwatered, especially those that might be contain the moisture crystals. So there might be some variability in the plant's performance and health because it might have gotten too much irrigation, whereas if you had a single pot with that potting soil at home, you probably maybe wouldn't have watered it as much as the water it was receiving in our little demonstration. Now, another thing we wanted to measure was not just how well those plants did out in the field, but we actually took samples of each one of those potting soils and ran them through the OSU soil laboratory and did a compost as well as a greenhouse media test analysis on those soils as well. And as we looked at kind of what those analysis said compared to our actual field results, I wanted to share that with you. So we found that of our top 4, 3 of them, especially 2 of them that promoted that they would feed for up to 9 months, had the highest rates of ammonium in them. Now, ammonium is a slow release nitrogen, so that sort of goes along with the claims that it will continue to feed your plants longer. The 4th one, that's the Miracle-Gro Performance Organics all-purpose container, it does not claim to feed for 9 months. In fact, it only claims to feed for 3 months, but it had the highest rate of nitrate nitrogen, which is actually quick release nitrogen. So that sort of makes sense that it would quickly feed your plants for those 3 months. Now, keep in mind, our trial only went for 3 months, so we didn't necessarily test these for all 9 months. Of our 16 potting soils, we actually included 3 that were also mentioned as being raised bed mixes, and we have to say the raised bed mixes did not perform well in our containers. Another aspect to consider when you're going and purchasing potting soil is the price, of course. Now, it's not like you can just look at the price and compare straight across the board because each one of them typically come in variable volumes. And so you need to look at how many cubic feet it is. Now, when we look at our top 4 and the pricing of those 4, we broke it down by price per cubic foot. And Fox Farm, which we really like, came in as the most expensive at around $12 per cubic foot. The Miracle-Gro Performance Organic All-Purpose Container Mix was next at just under $8 per cubic foot. And it also should be noted, however, that this one is OMRI listed. So if you are an organic gardener or prefer to grow that way, then that would be one that you would want to maybe consider. However, we think you probably will get your biggest bang for your buck if you stay with either the Stay Green Moisture Max potting mix plus fertilizer that was slightly over $5, or the Stay Green potting mix plus fertilizer, which was just under $5 per cubic foot. So those both performed well, and they also were on the cheaper side. Now, of course, consider prices are changing, and so they may have changed, or you might find different prices in your area as well. Now, with all that said, we did this a second year in 2022, and we did find some variability. Now, our top performers were not necessarily the top performers in 2022. However, they weren't at the bottom either. The one biggest thing that was the most interesting as far as the variability is when we tested those potting soils again the following year, we found a high variability in actually the nutrients. Of course, they all contain plenty of nutrients. However, we just saw that there was a lot of variability in those bags, even within the same brand. And that probably depends on where their distribution is coming from, and also the source material that they are getting each year to make those different potting soils. We just hope that our little demonstration would help demystify your choices when you go to those garden centers, and hopefully help make you a more informed consumer.
Hi everybody, today I'm going to show you how to make this walnut and asparagus salad, which will be great as a side dish to take to a potluck or just on your own family's table. I'm starting with half a cup of walnuts that I've toasted. And if you've never toasted walnuts before, just put them in a dry skillet over medium heat for 3 or 4 minutes. Keep an eye on it because they will burn pretty quickly. And then just put them in a bowl to cool down. To that, I'm going to add 1/3 cup of breadcrumbs. I'm going to zest my lemon right over this. To zest a lemon, you just want to take the colored part off without getting all the way down to the white pithy part. That part is much more bitter. And so you get a nice lemon flavor if you just take off the very outermost part of the rind. Get all of that into the bowl. We're going to put half a cup of Parmesan cheese, some black pepper. You don't have to crack it. You can use the kind that's already done, and that will be fine. And some parsley. This is a pretty small bunch, so I'm going to use all of the top part. I'm just going to run my knife through it a few times, 2 or 3 times. You can make it as small as you want or leave it as whole as you want. We'll put all of that in the bowl. I'm going to give it a mix and then set it aside. And then I'm going to go to my black beans. So I've got a whole can of black beans that I have drained and rinsed in this bowl. And to this, I'm going to add a bunch of fresh asparagus that I washed and trimmed and cut pretty small. I cut it on a diagonal because I think it looks pretty that way, but you could cut it straight or diagonal if you want. Now we're also going to add a little bit of olive oil, about 2 tablespoons of olive oil here. And the juice from that lemon that we zested. So just cut it in half and squeeze the juice right in. Now we'll toss this together. And these are the 2 components for our salad. If you wanted to make this ahead of time, then just leave these 2 components separate, your 2 separate bowls. Store this covered in the refrigerator. Store this covered in the refrigerator separately because it does have that cheese in there, so you want it in the fridge. And then right before you serve it, you're going to take your bowl of walnuts and parsley and cheese, put it into the bowl with the asparagus and the black beans, give it a toss, and you're ready to go. This dish is loaded with vitamins and minerals. The black beans are going to give you lots of fiber. It's going to be a tasty, healthy side dish. If the Parmesan cheese does not give it quite enough salty flavor for you, you could add a little bit of salt, but I don't think you're going to need it. I hope you'll try this one.
There are a lot of great horticulture activities this time of year. Be sure and consider some of these events in the weeks ahead. Next week on Oklahoma Gardening, we turn our attention to birds and Bermuda grass. You won't want to miss it. To find out more information about show topics as well as recipes, videos, articles, fact sheets, and other resources, including a directory of local extension offices, be sure to visit our website at oklahomagardening.okstate.edu. Join in on Facebook and Instagram. You can find this entire show and other recent shows as well as individual segments on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. Tune in to our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel to watch segments from previous hosts. Oklahoma Gardening is produced by the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University. The Botanic Garden at OSU is home to our studio gardens, and we encourage you to come visit this beautiful Stillwater gem. We would like to thank our generous underwriter, the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry. Additional support is also provided by Greenleaf Nursery and the Garden Debut Plants, the Oklahoma Horticulture Society, the Tulsa Garden Club, and the Tulsa Garden Center.